Welcome to our candidates interview, in which we bring candidates for town offices directly to your home. This interview is brought to you by LakeCAM, Lakeville's public education and government access television stations. My name is Katie Goodfellow, and I currently serve as town moderator. With me is Joanne Upham, who will interview our candidate today. Our guest is Ms. Nora Cline, who is running for the Board of Selectmen as a write-in candidate. Joanne and I drew the questions that we'll ask Ms. Cline from past debates and interviews, as well as considered ones recently submitted by town residents. Both this interview and one conducted with candidate Lorraine Carboni will be broadcast after everyone has had the opportunity to participate. To begin the interview, Ms. Cline will have 3 minutes to introduce herself and explain why she's running for the open seat. And then she'll be permitted 5 minutes to answer each question. And Nora, you do not need to use the entire time. Take what you need. After Ms. Upham has asked all of the questions, there are 8, Ms. Cline will be given 2 minutes to make a closing statement. So, welcome, Ms. Cline.
Thank you.
Would you please share with our voters a bit about yourself and your reasons for running this year?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for doing this, and thank you to LakeCAM for hosting this. I moved to Lakeville in 1999, and I kind of like to say that Lakeville chose me. It's rural character, yet being close to all those other amenities you need just drew me in. It reminded me so much of the town I grew up in Ohio. It was a very small rural town, might be a little bit bigger than Lakeville, but I grew up on a family farm, small family farm, and I think my work ethic and how I approach my day-to-day work was really instilled upon me in my early days. I have degrees in psychology. Don't be afraid, I'm not psychoanalyzing anyone. And I have various industry certifications. I've been employed for the last 17 years by a company who's headquartered down in Rhode Island, a very large natural and organic company. One of our primary customers is Whole Foods, that we service them with all their natural and organic foods and general merchandise needs. I've worked my way up the ladder with this company to where I am now what they call the group manager, in charge of planning, training, and education of all our what they call supplier relationship managers, who negotiate with suppliers and make the deals with the suppliers, pick out the product, so on and so forth. We've had 3 exchange students in the school system, and that have been embraced by the town here. So I'm not unfamiliar with the school system, probably have seen it from a different view, having kids whose English is not their first language. I currently sit on the Zoning Board of Appeals that started in October, and it's kind of gotten my feet wet as to what's going on in the town. And that's really what has driven me to do this. With the advance of the pandemic and people working from home, all the meetings having gone to Zoom, it afforded me more of an opportunity to attend meetings. I think I attend every single one, although I'll be missing one for a little bit tonight. I think the Board of Health is meeting. But it's afforded me the opportunity to listen, and then listen to a lot of the social engagement that's going on out there in social media. And it brought me to run for 3 really key reasons. One, transparency, okay? There has been, and not necessarily in this current board, but previously there has been some lack of transparency. We need to put the agenda of the town and the residents first. I don't have a personal agenda, okay? My agenda is what the town needs. And then the 3rd reason is representation, which kind of goes with the agenda. I feel that we need to have a little bit better representation of the voice of the residents in listening to them as well as giving it back.
Great, thank you. And that's the time, Joanne.
Okay. And so, Nora, we're going to start with question number 1. And you touched on it a little bit in your little chat about yourself. The position on the Board of Selectmen involves working collaboratively with other members of the board and with other boards and groups in town. How do you envision working with other members of the board? And please describe how you work with others in times of agreement and in times of disagreement.
Great question. First of all, I'm a very project-oriented person. I'm have been described as pretty black and white. I look at the facts and I analyze the facts. I solicit information from other people. In this case, would be other people on the board or on other boards, as well as residencies. What I have seen from the past is transparency and communication are the key. And that's been a little lacking. If you look at what's happened over the last, let's say 10 years, and we can talk about the hospital property later, but there's been a lack, or at least a feeling from residents of a lack of transparency in what's been occurring. There's not enough communication between boards. You know, it's like everybody's operating in their own little silo. We need to set up, whether it's quarterly, bi-quarterly meetings with all the chairs of all the boards. So everybody knows what everyone is working on. The master plan tells us we all have common goals. And if we're all not working towards those common goals of the master plan, then we're not representing ourselves to the residents. The other thing is we struggle to get residents involved. And I think, again, that goes back to communications. One of the things that where my psychology degree comes in handy, and would in this situation as well as it does in my current work, is it's taught me to listen. And it's taught me to solicit information and not just sit there and think, I know it all, but to listen. I don't know of any single instant that I've been in that's been negative going in that we haven't been able to turn it around and at least come to some sense of an agreement of what's the right direction to go.
Okay. Katie, we have a little bit more time?
You do. You have 3 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
How about just describing a little bit how you would work with people in times of disagreement?
Excellent. Again, you're going to hear me, you're going to get tired of me saying this, but it's communications and hearing them out. A great example is the people I work with are all what I call type A personalities. Everybody feels that their way is the best and their way is the only way. Now, I, as their planner and educator and trainer, have to steer them to understand that maybe there is a better way. And it's really all about creating the path, getting them to buy into the path, and eventually coming to understand, you know what, maybe I was wrong. Maybe there is a different way to look at it. But I could also be wrong too, and I'm more than willing to admit that. I was a great negotiator with suppliers because I always went in with a goal, knew what I wanted to achieve, and I walked them down to a path where it ended up being their idea. So everything was fine. So it's really all about communication and, most importantly, listening.
Okay. Our next question. Thank you for that. Board members must make difficult decisions that promote the general welfare and not their own interests or business ventures. Please explain how you would approach making decisions in the best interests of the voters for the town of Lakeville.
Well, and I don't want this to be misinterpreted at all, but I have no agenda. Okay. I have no relationship with any developers, with any construction companies. I have no conflicts that would cause me not to be able to sit and review very objectively anything that came before me on the Board of Selectmen. And I think the board that we have currently today with Leah and Rich is pretty much the same. I really hate that Brian's leaving. Brian's been a great Board of Selectmen for Lakeville. He, in a very short time, has made his mark, and I hope someday he does come back. But the whole key, again, is communication. You have to listen, and you have to be willing to listen to the other person to make sure that their voice is being heard, that you're not ignoring them and just saying, well, okay, you want it done your way, I guess I got to do it your way.
Good point. Okay, the next question. What do you see as the biggest challenges to the town's budget over the next 3 to 5 years?
Boy, that's a big one. So education represents 61% of the town's budget, okay, today. And with the pandemic that's going on, we understand, you know, revenues are not what revenues have been in the past. Yes, there's programs coming in from the state and from the federal government, but the budget's going to be tough. I've looked at the budget that is being worked on for 2022, and it's going to be a tough budget to meet. Besides the 61% going to education, we have some of our own dilemmas that we need to look at. How are we going to finance? As an example, and the master plan points us out, the fire department. I know today we're doing some patchwork to try to improve the conditions for our ladies and gentlemen of the fire department by moving some of the offices down to the old library where the coffee house used to be. That's going to help, but that's a short-term fix. That's not a long-term fix. I wasn't on the board. I wasn't on any of the boards when we did the police department, but I sit here and ask myself, why didn't we do a combined department of fire and police? I'm sure there must be reasons, but we are very soon, and not in the too far distant future, going to have to address the fire station. The needs are becoming more and more. We may not be moving a lot of people into town, but there's buildings being moved into town. There's people who work are being moved into town. The resources that are required, particularly from our fire department, are not going to decrease. They're increasing, and we have to address it. Our firefighters deserve better than what they have today. The other thing that's going to put a little bit of stretch on the budget is the Apsawamsett School. I think the school was built in 1948 or 49. There was a addition put on it in 54, 63, and then I think also 1988. Okay. There's still work that needs to be done to that school. Now, some may say, well, why don't we just build a new school? Fine. How are we going to finance it? Okay. I don't think the residents are ready for another levy to finance something. And right now, the residents of Lakeville bear the burden of the taxes. Until we can get economic growth in that kind of levels off that tax burden, making these type of improvements, it's going to have to take a lot of creativity.
Yeah, you're right. We done with that question? I can't tell.
Yes, we're done. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's okay. All right. That's fine. All right. The next one is, what is your opinion of Lakeville's master plan?
I've probably am too much of a geek, but I've read it front to back a couple times.
Okay.
I read the 2021 and I've read the 2030. I think it's the right direction for Lakeville. The protection of open space is critical. I mean, I look at what the town has done with Betty's Neck, with Loon Pond, with Ted Williams, and I look at what's the next open space for us. Is it one of the golf clubs? We've all heard the rumors about Lakeville Country Club. Nothing's come before the board yet, but is that the next open space that we want to protect? And if we do, again, how are we going to finance that? You know, what are we going to do to finance it? Again, it's going to take some creativity. I'm glad to see the administrator that Lakeville interviewed and is hiring. He comes with a wealth of creative knowledge in raising monies for towns through grants and other things. Mm-hmm. But I'm hoping he's got some creative solutions to help us with that. But I believe in the master plan. I think it's extremely well thought out. The resident involvement in this one is much more than it was in 2020 or 2010. Much more involvement, and the detail that's in this, I think, is tremendous. Now the proof is in the pudding, is the implementation. We need to implement that. And one of the main things that came out of being able to implement it is Lakeville needs a planner. We need a planner that is going to hold all the boards accountable for this master plan, because this tells us what the residents want.
Right, right. I agree with you. All right, our next question, and you touched on it a little bit. Conservation and responsible environmental stewardship are important to many Lakeville voters. What is your opinion of the creation of a Community Preservation Act bylaw, better known as the CPA?
I think it's necessary. I know that we have the APR on the Wilkie farm, and I believe that was the first one ever done in the state.
Yes.
We have the APR on, I think it's Roach Farm on Highland, but we need the CPA, and we need it in order, not just from a funding standpoint, but in order to protect those things that should be protected. There's not a whole lot that I can say on it because it's pretty self-explanatory. But I think as part of the master plan, it's one of the critical components that we need to help those open spaces, preserve the things, and clean up some of the invasive weeds that are out there in the lakes.
Okay. Lakeville voters are interested to know what your views are on the proposed development of the Lakeville Hospital site.
Can I plead the fifth here? No. You know, there's a lot of things that have occurred, and this is probably one of the hottest buttons right now out on social media. I happen to be the administrator for Lakeville Helping Lakeville. I think that's where everybody probably knows my name, and that's 7,500 people who are on there. They're not all from Lakeville, but probably 60 to 70% are. Yeah. And then I'm also a member of the Responsible Growth Facebook page, which has been very, very vocal about the hospital. And here's how I look at it. There were some things done in the past that placed us in the position where we are today. And we can't fix that, nor can we allow that to repeat in the future. Okay. The current owner of the property made promises to the town. I think it was in a maybe 2018. I'd have to go back and look, town meeting that was on LakeCAM, where he promised mixed usage of the property and asked to be allowed to sell some of the property that borders 79 in order to fund the cleaning of the property. And we all know where we sit today. Okay, that was a promise that's gone broken. Okay, and for whatever reason, it's gone broken. It has. In my mind, there's a question as to why did the Development Opportunities District get put over the whole town. Okay, it had to be advantageous to people at that certain point. And that's why I go back to, we really need the agenda to be the agenda of the residents. Okay, because this took away some power from the people to be able to vote on things, because it did turn it into one of those opportunity development areas. This is not my decision to make. It needs to be the residents' decision. And that's why I put it out at my own expense, a survey monkey out on Lakeville Helping Lakeville. And I've been surprised by the results. I'm going to make them public to everyone, even though it's non-binding. I thought overwhelmingly and against, and it's not. It's pretty tied. There's a lot of people who are saying enough is enough. It's an eyesore. The DEP says they're airborne contaminants. It needs to be cleaned up. The town can't afford the $10 to $16 million that it's going to take to clean it up. Am I happy it's going to be that big of a warehouse if it goes through? I'm not. Okay. I would have preferred mixed usage of the property. But then again, I think about the contaminants in there and who's going to put housing on it. We don't know the depth of the contaminant. We just don't know how much mitigation is going to have to occur. So to make a long story short, for where we are today in the process, I think it's up to the planning board to make the right decision. And if their decision is to go forward, to put the right conditions on this. We need a bond to hold Rhino Capital to their commitment of cleaning up the property. I certainly would like Rhino Capital to be able to tell us who the tenant's going to be, but I'm not sure they know. Okay. I think they're building this on spec of what they think could happen. Okay. But I put a lot of faith in our planning board that they're going to do the right thing and put the right on there so that it's going to be okay for Lakeville. And if I have just a couple more minutes on this, we have to look at the development that's how many?
1 minute left.
We have to look at the development that's happening on 105. Look at the new train station right across 495 in Middleborough. Look at the 100 to 200 affordable housing units. Look at all the building that's going on there. 105, regardless of this warehouse, is going to be extremely busy. So we need to do what's in Lakeville's best interest to mitigate the effect to Lakeville.
Perfect. Joanne, your mic is off. There.
All right, sorry. In August of 2020, the town of Freetown passed a proposal to create the Freetown-Lakeville Lake District. Do you know about this proposal? And if so, what are your views on it? And if you're not aware of it, I can read a copy of the warrant article that was passed in Freetown.
I don't know that much about it. So if you could read me the warrant, that would be great.
Okay. This is just a little clip that Katie and I came up with from the warrant.
Okay.
To see if the town will put forth legislation to establish the Freetown-Lakeville Lake District in the towns of Lakeville and Freetown. The district's purpose is to use sustainable and appropriate environmental practices to encourage biodiversity in the plant and animal communities that use the lakes in the district, while controlling nuisance or damaging species in Long Pond, and to take the appropriate action to protect and maintain integrity of the water. We understand that in carrying out the purpose of the district, an assessment fee shall be collected from town residents abutting and or having deeded access to Long Pond on an annual basis.
Well, I'm going to tell you surfacely without knowing all the details behind it. It sounds reasonable. The people that use the lake deserve to have a lake that's clean. And I don't know, other than forming this type of an association, how that would happen. Obviously, they would have to get funding. I'm not sure the fees they would collect from those who live on the lake would be enough to fund the cleanups that needs to be done with the invasive species that are out there, some of the rocks and trash, for lack of a better word, that's in the lake and boats have a tendency to hit. But surfacely, it sounds like it's a good idea, but again, I don't know all the details. I'd want to do a little bit more research on it, but surfacely, it sounds like a good idea.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay.
Your last question. What is your opinion of the continued development of marijuana-based businesses in Lakeville? How do you feel about the current laws surrounding it? And do you see a need to change or amend any of them?
Well, it's kind of like how many's too many and how many too few. I think right now we have six host agreements. Mm-hmm. But those 6 host agreements don't necessarily mean that there's 6 establishments. Each location may have 1 or 2 agreements depending on what they're doing. I'm not in favor of it being anywhere than in the current industrial parks where it's located. I think it's well contained there. I'm also not in favor of a retail establishment in Lakeville. We have one right over the border in Middleborough. But again, I'm not sure that since it's now legal in the state, how much leeway we have to say no. It is a tax revenue. It's not as much as what everybody thinks it is. I like the charitable part where they all have to give. I think it's around $50,000. It could be a little bit more that goes to local charities. I like that part. I'm simply not in favor of the retail part. Manufacturing, limiting it to where it is and capping off how many host agreements we have, I think is fine. I don't know how we got to 6. I've still been looking at that. I don't know how we got to 6 agreements, but we did.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And that wraps up our questions for this interview. Would you like to give us a brief 2-minute closing statement to our viewers?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I don't think it'll take 2 minutes, but again, I want to thank Katie and Joni and LakeCAM for hosting this and for the questions. Most of all, I want to thank the residents that take the time to watch and listen to both candidates. The one thing I'll say, I'm not a politician, okay? I'm pretty black and white, not a lot of gray there. I don't have a real good filter. I have a tendency to say it how it is. And that's probably one of my weaknesses. I don't have a good filter. If I disagree with something, I'm going to disagree. But again, I do listen. I'm not so stubborn that it's going to be my way or the highway. It's what the residents of Lakeville want. I have no personal agenda. I've not been employed by the town. I've not been a representative in any way, shape, or form of a developer, a construction person. I come in this with pretty open eyes. Brian, something, and I think it was in response to one of your questions, because at the time that he became a selectman, I think he'd only been in Lakeville for 3 years, that he wanted to come in as a board member to serve. And he was coming in with a whole different opinion and open eyes. And that's how I feel. I don't think you need to be in town government for years and years to serve. I think you need to have that willingness to make some decisions, knowing that you've got the best interest of the town at heart. Listen, Lakeville has some difficult decisions to make ahead. That's going to require constant communication. And we have the tools to do that, whether it's Survey Monkeys, whether it's social media, whether it's plain old-fashioned mail, which our older citizens like. We have communicate. We're just not using them, and that frustrates me to no end. We have a master plan that a great deal of time was spent on, and I can only promise in return that I'll represent I will regularly communicate with them, and I'll do everything in my power to represent them, because it is really all about you, the residents of Lakeville. I thank you, and everybody get out and vote on April 5th.
Thank you very much. And you took the words right out of my mouth. So I was going to remind everyone watching to come and vote in the annual town election on Monday. That is April 5th. From 12 noon to 8 p.m. Notice that it is 12 noon, so don't go in the morning. And that is at the Loon Pond Lodge at Ted Williams. And thank you again, Ms. Cline. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.